All right, we'll call to order the Grand Forks Growth Fund Committee. It's December 4th at approximately 4:31 p.m. Welcome and roll call.
Crary.
Here.
Holf.
Here.
Kavami.
Here.
Wasowski.
Here.
Weigel.
Here.
Whitney.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 2, minutes, meeting of October 16th, 2023.
I move approval.
We have a motion by Osowski,
Second.
second by Holf. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to item number 3, contract award Hive second floor remodel.
Thank you, Mr. Weigel. As your staff report says, we opened bids on this project at JLG's office on November 28th. When this was before you on October 16th to authorize bidding, the project budget was just under $875,000, with the recommended low bids, including alternates that are listed under staff recommended action. We are $45,000 under budget, with the bids plus contingencies totaling just shy of $830,000. There was a slight discrepancy. If you look at the bid tabs, you'll see that Nate's Electric had the apparent low bidder, but with some further review by JLG's team, they discovered that there had been a mistake in their bid, and so they have withdrawn it. But even with the bid from Northern Valley Electric, as I said, we're still under that original budget by about $45,000. The recommendation is to approve those contracts listed at the amount shown. We would then be on schedule for beginning construction in January, presumably wrap up in April, May, with occupancy in May, June. We've had pretty good interest already. Once we get these contracts executed, we have letters of intent from 3 tenants for this space. And so once we get a little bit further along on the construction side, we'll start coming forward with leases for you to look at and approve. We do have Sean Seneschal from JLG if you have any questions about the project, but certainly happy to stand for any questions, but we're just seeking authorization to proceed with contracts.
Thank you. Any comments, questions?
I move approval.
Motion by Osowski, second by Kavami. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Move on to item number 5, match request EDC Regional Workforce Impact Program grant application.
Mr. Chairman, you missed item 4.
Good idea. We'll move on to item number 4, funding request, Red River Regional Council Rural Housing Study.
Thank you. I would like to introduce Lisa Rotvold from, she's affiliated with both the Red River Regional Council and the Red River Community Housing Development Organization. Lisa has worked in affordable housing for 20-plus years. Her affiliation with the Eastern Dakota Housing Alliance, I remember she was building affordable housing up in Selkirk Circle in the early 2000s, and she has had a big role at Beyond Shelter as well. So with that, Lisa, I'll let you talk about your request.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Meredith. As Meredith said, I have been working in the affordable housing industry for almost 28 years and have recently taken on a position with the Red River Regional Council and Red River Community Housing Development Organization to see if we can, come up with more capacity in our rural communities in trying to meet some of the housing needs that are being expressed by leaders all over the region. The CHODA was identified, it's a nonprofit, it's 501c3 nonprofit. It was identified as a potential risk taker to be able to maybe jumpstart development in some places where private developers haven't been induced or motivated to come and do work, in large part because they're doing just fine. They're doing great. building in the population centers, and they don't really need to come out to the small towns. So in 2020, well, no, it was 2022, in October of 2022, North Dakota Housing Finance published their statewide housing needs assessment. And their needs assessment was based off census data and past economic trends. It didn't reflect much growth outside of the city of Grand Forks. And yet, when we go out into the communities in rural Grand Forks County and around the region, all we hear is, gosh, we need housing. We really need housing. We want to hire people, but they can't find housing. We're losing people because they can't find housing. And so we felt like there's a real disconnect between what that data was saying and the reality on the ground. And so as one of the first things we decided to do with ramping up we call it a Community Housing Development Organization, a CHODO, one of the first things we decided to do was try and get a handle on how do we capture and quantify the opportunity that we have here in Region 4 based on all the economic development that's happening around the region. Grand Sky, just to name one, but so many other great things happening, and businesses looking for employees that housing is going to have to come along with it, or we will miss out on some of these economic opportunities. And so we sought a consultant to do a very forward-looking housing study. And the whole idea is we want to capture what the opportunity is. We want to try and quantify that. And then we want to try and do some action planning around how do we help communities to prepare themselves to be ready when development is needed, and be an appealing option for private developers. The CHODO, we will be doing some development as well, but obviously we cannot do all the development. So anyway, so that's kind of background of the Red River CHODO and kind of why this housing study is being done. The objective is that we end up with a report for each county on existing housing and existing housing opportunity. And then the phase 2 of the study is bringing people together and having some action planning sessions. We're calling them build sessions. They'll be facilitated by our consultant, Fourth Economy. Those sessions will happen early next year, probably January, February, maybe into March. And then after that, we should have 4 action plans. One for Grand Forks County, one for Nelson, one for Pembina, one for Walsh. So we're super excited. This planning, study and planning is being done right in line with the CEDS, which is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for Region 4. And we really are hoping that we can align some of the housing activity with the economic development activity and really build a strong case and go, tell our state legislature and funders about how, all the great things happening in Region 4 and what resources would really help move things forward. So one of the other objectives, I guess, in coming to Region 4, we just have everything small. Grand Forks, you guys are a big city. And there's just a lot of resources that we can't tap into because we're small. And so also I'm hoping that through this process, we might be able to identify some opportunities to, band together and be able to tap into some resources that we couldn't on our own, but if we all band together and we have, sort of the mass that we need to say go after capital magnet funds or, have a CDFI in, Grand Forks or something along those lines, that would be really great too, because it would allow more resources to be available in the region to help with all kinds of community development work. So we have, the study is going to cost $85,000. We have about 80 of that secured. I still have 10 pending with another donor, but that is trending in the right direction. And so this last 5 that we need is what we came to you for, to see if you would be willing to make that investment in the region and partner up with us and see if we can tell our story really, really well.
Thank you.
Questions?
Questions? A couple people. Ms. Osowski, will let you go first.
Okay, so I was looking, I guess my first question is, so you say Zone 4, is that just in North Dakota?
Yeah, so Region 4, the state is kind of divided up into 8 planning regions. And so they are recognized by the Department of Commerce for some of their funding programs. The community action agencies use the same regions. And so Region 4 includes Grand Forks, Nelson, Pembina, and Walsh
I read that.
counties.
My question is why is Minnesota Housing Partnership
Minnesota Housing-
investing so
yeah.
much into North
Gotcha.
Dakota, I guess?
Yeah. So Minnesota Housing Partnership is has a technical assistance program that they are pass through for HUD, and they work with nonprofit organizations all over the country to help build capacity in rural places. We got some help from them for the study, and that's where the money is coming from. It's not from the state of North Dakota. It is it's HUD money getting passed through them to us.
Through the state of Minnesota, okay. I guess a question that I have is, you're getting $5,000 from the EDC, which the city of Grand Forks contributes to. You're getting $5,000 from the Grand Forks Housing Authority, and now you're back asking, for more taxpayer funds, another $5,000, when really I feel that this is a county issue and not a city of Grand Forks issue. I feel that the city has contributed through these other programs. And then, it says that you guys look at cities with populations between 1,000 and 500. I guess I don't really know. Is it just the city? I don't know how many people are in the city of Manville, but then do we just skip over little towns like that?
So the reason that we came to the Growth Fund is that the support for the study is in large part coming from the job development authorities from each of the counties. And it is my understanding that this group gets the mills for the Grand Forks County JDA. That's what I've been told. I don't know much about how that all flows, but that is why we came to you.
Ms. Richards, would you just want to clarify that quick?
Well, yes, if I could just interject, there is no Grand Forks County JDA. This JDA acts, and as you know, the EDC acts on behalf of the county. This group has approved funding for properties that are located outside of the city limits and within Grand Forks County. So we are what passes for, the Walsh County JDA, for instance. So, it could come to the JDA, it could come to the city, but the idea is that we support workforce in the community as well as regionally.
Okay. Another, I guess I'm just kind of trying to think this through. At first you said that these private developers are just happy in Grand Forks and they're not really looking outside. So then how are you going to convince them then to pick up these projects? Are you doing this work on behalf of like then contractors to kind of like sell them to build
Yeah.
places to live? Then shouldn't private contractors hire you to do studies like this? Or I'm just kind of,
So, yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So we are a nonprofit developer. And so one of the things that we plan to do is build single-family housing and be the developer. So by doing that, we can take the risk away from a private developer, which is one of the reasons we've identified that private developers aren't coming out into rural communities because it's riskier than, you build a house in Grand Forks and 100% you're going to sell it, no question. And that'll go quickly. So to provide a little incentive, a little less risk for a builder, we will be the builder, and then we will sell the house to somebody when it is complete. And so by doing that, we're hoping that we will prove the market, meaning, we will demonstrate to other builders that there is a demand for new housing, and there is a market for it, and that if they come, it will be a good risk for them to take.
so then
So that's one of the things we're hoping to do to jumpstart.
We pay you
yeah, I
to
guess
do the
contract
research
availability
and
has just
then-
been a real challenge, and so even for us to find a contractor is proving to be very challenging. But we are working on that and visiting with a couple of folks that are interested in helping us out with some construction next year.
So we pay you guys to do the research, and then you guys go in, build homes, and then you sell these homes at profit?
No. So this is a regional study. It is intended to benefit the entire region, any community in the region that is interested in growth, so that they can, take stock of what opportunities might be available to them and what they might be able to do to prepare themselves to, be a good choice for somebody moving to the region and seeking employment. So we're a nonprofit. So we're not building houses to make money. We're building houses to jumpstart the housing market in some places that lie outside of the Grand Forks area. We also will be helping with developing some rental housing, and that, maybe in the Grand Forks area, maybe in some of the other communities around the region. But yeah, we're a nonprofit. We're not, and the study will be available to, the whole region. So, it'll be a resource that counties and communities in Region 4 will have available to them, as they try and have those conversations with employers and potential developers.
So what happens if we say no to the $5,000 then? Because you guys have already started. I read that you guys have a meeting tomorrow, I believe. It's tomorrow the
Yeah.
5th.
Yeah, well,
So-
we'll have to go find somebody else, I guess.
I guess I personally do not support this, but thank you for answering my questions.
All right.
Ms. Whitney?
Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of questions that I have. First, how did you decide on cities with populations between 1,000 and 5,000? I think to maybe reiterate the question from Ms. Osowski versus smaller towns that may have fewer than 1,000, or some, cities that may be between 5,000 and a population the size of the city of Grand Forks. How did you come to that decision on that, those
Right.
numbers?
Yeah, so Grand Forks is obviously the largest city in the region. The second largest city is Grafton, and that Grafton has 4,200. And there are, I think, 5 communities that have population over 1,000. And then we start dipping down into the communities that have a population of 500. And when we get down to 500 or under, there's less data available, just because of the way the census collects data, and they, want to make sure that data is not identifiable. And so the more, I don't know, and maybe Meredith has more insight into that too, but they just don't dive as deep on the data gathering the smaller the places get. And so we'll gather what we can, but just by the availability of data, it will focus on, you know, those that are a little bit larger. We will also be doing interviews, focus groups, and a survey. Those will be widely distributed and will include people from, you know, all over the region, regardless of the size of the community. So we really do hope to get, you know, input and, you know, good information from those communities, talking about what their needs are and what their vision is for their community. But as far as the data, it's a little tricky when we get down to really small places.
So I think what I heard you say is there's between Grand Forks and Grafton, there's no cities population-wise that even come close. Maybe I'm not asking a rhetorical question, but
No, there's not.
there is nothing. Okay, so then I guess my other question is if really Grand Forks is the one outlier, could we, or is there, I mean, when you read this, it says tackling regional housing challenges. Does that mean that there's an assumption that Grand Forks doesn't have a housing challenge, so they're not included in understanding or studying this problem?
Not at all.
That just because we're largest in the county for Planning Region 4, that there's an assumption going into this study that Grand Forks doesn't have a housing challenge, because I would beg to differ on that. And why would Grand Forks not be included in something like this if we're supporting it and contributing to it, even as the largest entity in Region 4?
So the reason, you know, obviously Grand Forks has housing challenges, right? And when we started this, we knew, you know, the city of Grand Forks, you know, has done housing studies in the past and probably will again. A lot of this stuff is going to show up in the countywide data. And I guess we kind of thought maybe you guys had your own thing going. And we really wanted to make sure we were covering those places that didn't have the resources to do their own.
So would there be an option to be open to including Grand Forks in this process as the city, instead of maybe going on an assumption that there is its own thing going? Is that an opportunity and an option as part of this project?
Yeah, I think it would be.
Match was to move forward. And then I guess my last question would be, through this process, if you hear that housing isn't of an interest in certain areas, what do you do with a potential information that says we don't have an interest in building in certain places over others? How does that get translated if that type of information is put forward, rather than to the affirmative of, we're going to make this massive investment in all this just because we hear that too? What happens on the other side?
Yeah, I think what the study is going to help us identify is which communities are motivated and open to development. I expect that when we get to the planning portion of this, if there are communities that just aren't interested and it's not of concern to them, they're probably not going to be at the table. And so, as with so many things, those communities that are ready and willing to put forth, you know, the time and energy to work on planning, those are the ones that are going to be the ones that benefit the most and end up, you know, actually getting some development.
So, I mean, I'm more comfortable supporting this if Grand Forks as a city was also included and not excluded just because we're larger. So that would be, you know, one friendly amendment that I would be comfortable with if that was to be a part of this proposal.
Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this Region 4 is generally a rural county. As Lisa said, Grand Forks is really the only city over 5,000. And so any Region 4 study is going to kind of, by its nature, have a rural focus. I believe someone from the EDC is on the steering committee, so we will have Mr. Lund. So we will have good Grand Forks City representation as part of the process. I would imagine that if we were so impressed with the work of this group that we wanted to have the same organization do a focused study on our Grand Forks City housing needs, we would have to go through an amendment process because we have not procured that. But having not checked with their consultant, I think that would be a question we would have to ask. Would they be willing to expand their study if we asked them to?
We actually have had the conversation about potentially doing some add-on work for other small towns if they want to dive a little deeper, and they have been open to that. So if there is interest, I can definitely go back to them and have that conversation with them about Grand Forks to see what can we include and what could we potentially add and what the cost for that might be. And if we were to do that, I think I would, want to include Meredith or someone from the committee in that conversation, just to make sure that, the vision of the end product is clearly conveyed. Make sure the city gets what they want if you want to go that route. But yeah, we'd be thrilled to do that.
Well, I know that just casually within our office, on the city side more than the JDA side, we talk about how long it has been since Grand Forks has done a housing needs assessment. So, looking at our city planner who's in the audience, this is not a new subject.
Yeah, I mean, Ms. Richards, I think my question is more in that I feel there was an inherent assumption, listening to what we've heard, that just because Grand Forks is large, that we don't have a housing problem, and that just because we don't fit a 1,000 to 5,000 parameter, that it wasn't even considered that the city should be a part of that conversation. And that's, I think, the concern that I'm raising there. And so if there's an opportunity to take advantage of the fact that we're doing a housing study and it's a 4-county Region 4, I think we should look at it holistically would be my thought process there.
I will not argue against the need for us to do a housing study.
Mr. Curry.
Lisa, first of all, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time. Agree with the sentiments. I think that the challenge with that is you might get spread too thin, because I think Grand Forks in and of itself is probably a $50,000+ study, versus maybe breaking it down. The way I can get more comfortable with it, I guess, is for where I'm at, is thinking it from the JDA lens, not necessarily the city lens. And I think about the impact for one of the biggest challenges we have, right, is employee retention. And there's a lot of people where Grand Forks benefits, right, that don't actually live within city limits. I mean, look at Grand Sky. Grand Sky is technically not in city limits, and look how much the JDA supports that, right, because that's job growth. And most of those people, they might not live in Grand Forks, but it benefits Grand Forks. And when you think of the JDA and some of the funding, is the sales tax, right? So why do the citizens just pass for the new turf and aquatics facility? Is that will benefit Grand Forks 100%. It also benefits the surrounding area. So people live there, they're coming to Grand Forks, they're spending sales tax dollars, which goes into the coffers for more things like this. So I think thinking of it through the JDA lens, not necessarily just a pure city lens, it makes more sense to me, just because we're trying to support the region, so more people get drawn to the whole region. When people come to the region, they're coming to Grand Forks because we are the only city in the region, right? So I think it's kind of a roundabout way to justify it, I guess, but I think it still is important. And I think that just anecdotally from the profession I'm in, we've seen a lot of people actually this year, which is maybe surprised some people, but that have come from the coasts and literally have moved to small town North Dakota, and they don't want to be in Grand Forks, they want to be close to Grand Forks to get the benefits. So I do think that there's actually probably some merit to the idea of having a housing study done. I guess, Lisa, the question, that's where I'm thinking. But Lisa, I did actually have a question as well. I was wondering more like so I see the objectives, right, a plan of action. Okay, it's kind of vague, right? So is that a plan of action to to change policy within these communities? Is that a plan of action to try to find incentives for developers? Is it a plan of action to take to the state and say, hey, here's the challenges we have. If we could only get a little infrastructure dollars and increase the capacity of the lagoon in Thompson so they could expand residential there? Or, I mean, so there's a lot of infrastructure challenges that no developer necessarily would take on.
Right.
But so what's the flavor of the report? So is it something you can take to the state and say, hey, if we only had this is how many more people we could draw and how many more houses we could build? Or what's the overall flavor? I don't like studies
Yeah,
or just
it's
having a
kind-
study to have a study. What's the action?
Yeah, it's kind of all of the above. I think it's meant to capture something that the Housing Finance Agency's study absolutely missed, and document the opportunity, and then have those conversations kind of regionally about what are things we can do, what communities have things in place that are ready to go, what communities, infrastructure is a very legitimate concern. Many of our small towns are just out of lots. And so infrastructure investment is needed. So helping to tell that story and wave that flag to state agencies, I think is going to be, the study will be helpful in that regard. I think during the planning sessions, we'll be talking about opportunities and we'll be talking about strategies. And I don't believe they're going to be the same for every community. I think there might be strategies that one community really embraces that another community might say, you know what, that's just not going to fly here. We just can't do that. We've got to do something different. And so having the conversations about the various tools, what's happening in other places, how are other communities tackling some of these challenges around the country, and helping, I think, our regional leaders are just really, they wear so many hats and they are stretched so thin, and we expect them to, make important decisions about, things that they're not experts in. So in large part, the planning part is going to be education. We're going to talk about the findings of the study. We're going to, educate. We're going to talk about what's happening in other parts of the country. We're going to talk about resources, talk about strategies, and, hopefully give them some tools to get things moving. In some communities, we might be making an investment in some housing development. In other communities, we probably won't be. Certainly, it will be, we can't do it all at once. It's a process. Housing is not fast. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but certainly like communities like Larimore and Northwood and Thompson are all communities that are facing these kinds of challenges.
Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, Ms. Rothwell, thanks again for being here. So I think you just started answering one of my questions. So if the communities, the end result of this is, kind of a strategy recommendation to communities with between 1,000 and 5,000 is my understanding. So how many of those are there in the region? And how many of them are there in Grand Forks County that would specifically receive some type of recommendation? That's my first question.
So I think there are 5. Well, 6 including Grafton. And in Grand Forks, it would be Larimore, Thompson, and then I'm kind of including Northwood in there because I think they're just under 1,000. But as I mentioned earlier, we're going to try and dive as deep as we can on data. And I have noted to our consultant that I'd like to try and dive down to 500 population to the extent that we're able. And, some data we might be able to get that granular and some data we might not, but.
So thank you. So in this case, if there's, let's say, if it is 5 cities between 1 and 5,000, 5 or 6, 2 or 3 of them would be in Grand Forks County that we would receive some type of recommended action plan. Is that
Yeah.
fair? So about half of it? Okay, that gives me more comfort with our investment as a region. As we know, this is an issue within the region. To Mr. Crary's point, what is the end result? There's a lot of things that go into solving this, but is there funding available right now to whatever these recommendations to actually execute, or will the plan be for your organization to take this study and then try to receive that funding as a developer and try to get something started?
I think it's going to be more of that. It's going to help us tell the story about the needs in the region and the grassroots generated solutions that we're looking to, meet our needs. So I think it aligns really well with the work that the Planning Council is doing on the economic development, comprehensive economic development plan. And having those two really strong studies in hand, I think we can make a really strong argument to any funder who is, looking at potentially investing in our region. And if it aligns with, the goals. The other thing I really like about it is that we're really trying to align housing development with economic development or workforce retention, because growth and retention, because that is really the need.
Okay, thank you. So at least from my perspective, this is a challenge, and I know that the Grand Forks Housing Authority and the Region EDC have supported if Thompson and Larimore and potentially Northwood would receive some type of action plan. About half the cities are in this county. I guess I would be in favor of us considering this. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
I guess
I will
would just
note
add-
that, I'm sorry.
I would just add a couple things. I do believe that a strong Thompson and a strong Northwood and a strong Larimore are good for Grand Forks, for the city of Grand Forks. However, I come back to the study or the action plan gathering of the tourism that we funded a couple years ago. I haven't seen any benefit from that, and maybe I'm not looking in the right places, which could be part of the issue. But I know we funded that for 5,000 or 10,000-ish, somewhere in there. And I haven't seen the benefit from that. And so while I want these communities to be strong, because I know it benefits our city, I still think that you have to have cities that are willing to go above and beyond and implement this action plan. And I know we've struggled with housing in Grand Forks, but we've done things about that. We've looked at specials and how long those specials can go out. We've looked at property tax breaks for people that invest in their own property. So I think the city of Grand Forks is doing some of these things. I just don't know if Larimore is going to, or Thompson's going to, or Northwood's going to. And so that's where I struggle. If we're not creating the buy-in with them to begin with, should we be putting our taxpayer dollars to forward an action plan that they'll never implement? That's where I kind of struggle with it. But I'd be happy for any quick comments, because we have 20 minutes. Mr. Kavami?
Just a quick comment. Thanks again for your time. Our job is to grow the economy, right? We're the growth fund. And if you think about my issues that I see, it's housing and it's childcare. And you look at housing, we have issues in Grand Forks. If you shrink that down to a rural, ratio, it's exponentially harder to get a developer to come and build anything in a small town. Privately, I work in almost exclusively rural communities across North Dakota, and they would die for resources to try to lure people in. I've personally tried to help connect communities and developers, and it's just so difficult to get any building done in small communities. If you think about what we're doing here in Grand Forks and the army of resources that we have, these smaller communities have nothing. They have, we're wearing multiple hats right now. They have, a mayor that's also on the school board that also drives the bus. And that's not something I'm making up. So how can we leverage these smaller towns. These are our suburbs. This is how we grow our community. And if we don't have a strong Larimore, we might as well just give up. But if they're going to not lean in, that's fine. That's on them. But we need to give them the tools. If we have this opportunity where 80,000 of 85 is paid for me, even if the tourism, which I think that we could talk about that because I think there's been some things that I've seen. But if we get 2 houses built in Larimore for 5,000, I'm on. Like, we need a reason for people to see that our communities are engaged and that we're trying to do something together. And the amount of, I'm going to take this message and take it to all the communities that I work in, because if there's resources out there, the counties need to know about it. And for that reason, I would love this to be done in Grand Forks, but I think that would double the price of the cost. And so I'm not ready to pay for that until we go through due diligence, but I would support it 5,000. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve the 5,000.
We have a motion on the floor.
I would second that.
So we have a motion by Kavami, a second by Wolf. Further comments?
I think the only comment I would add would be if there's any way, if a report does, with this reporting, if there's thinking about how does it look from a true county-wide perspective. I just wanted to make sure, and I think that was the fruit of my comments, was making sure that assumptions aren't made that there isn't a county-wide perspective to the look that is being taken around housing. If we're not thinking like a county, then how does that then help us? And I felt there was assumptions being made that we weren't thinking like a county from that perspective around Grand Forks. So I would just, if there can be some assurances of that, then I am comfortable. For a small investment of 5,000, it's just, I want to be careful of those assumptions and make sure those assumptions are stated.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Osowski dissenting. Move on to item number 5 now, match request EDC Regional Workforce Impact Grant Application. Mr.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Becca Kruger, who is our workforce specialist across the street at the EDC, to talk about her request.
Hello, thank you, Meredith.
If you could turn your mic on, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, thank you for having me here, Chairman Weigel and members of the Growth Fund. I am honored to carry this request forward and to talk about one of the things that greatly impacts our region, which is workforce. The legislator last year approved funding, $15 million statewide for regional workforce initiatives. So for our region, which we just went over, thank you, in the aforementioned presentation, is Walsh, Nelson, Pembina, and Grand Forks County. Within our region, there is $1.53 million that is available to support locally led workforce initiatives. So after talking amongst regional stakeholders, one of the things that we have come up with and one of the applications we'll be submitting is for a workforce action plan for the UAS sector, unmanned and autonomous systems, as well as for the manufacturing sector. So this action plan will involve leadership from manufacturing groups. So we have a manufacturing leadership group that represents Grand Forks County employers. And then there's also the Northeast Manufacturers Association, which represents the other 3 counties in our region. Additionally, the Chamber's UAS Leadership Council will help direct the work for the UAS portion of the Workforce Action Plan. So one of the reasons why we chose to focus on UAS and manufacturing is because each of these sectors are experiencing really unique workforce challenges. And at the EDC, we have 6 sectors that we focus on. These are 2 of those 6 sectors. So in manufacturing right now, what's happening amongst regional employers is they simply don't have enough people who can fill the open jobs. Included in your report, you'll see that across the 4 counties, there are 1,917 open jobs and just over 1,000 people who are collecting unemployment. So even if every single person took an open job, we would still have nearly 1,000 open jobs. And that's just the jobs that are published. I know if you're a Cirrus Aircraft and you have one layup technician, you're not publishing 50 of those jobs that are actually open. You're just publishing one job online. So we know that that problem is crazily compounded. In the UAS sector, we're also experiencing very unique workforce challenges. We have found that over the last 10 years, through NAICS codes that we track, we have grown from 537 jobs in that sector to over 1,500 jobs in that sector, a 300% increase. And one of the things through our BRE visits with UAS employers that we're hearing is that we don't have the type of talent needed to support the number of jobs that are growing in that sector. For example, software engineers is a big one, and senior software engineers, it's not something that our region produces in any amount of numbers. So the study will do a few things. It will look at current labor needs and projections over a 5-year period. It will look at skills gaps. So what talent and skills do the people who live here already have, and where are those gaps, so that we can look at our educational programs and put ones in place that are needed. Talent relocation opportunities, this is a big one. As you may all know, I manage Greater Grand Forks Way Cooler Than You Think Talent Attraction Initiative. One of the things that I would like to answer is what areas of the country are best to be targeting for these two sectors specifically. And so you'll see that we will be doing focus groups not only of area employers, of college students who recently graduated that we want to stay here, but also directly of people who live in other communities to learn what would get them to move. To answer that question, what would make you move for these two types of sector jobs? And then we'll also look at regional readiness and look at some of the assets that we have that might be helping these sectors or harming these sectors. And so I know one of the questions you had for the first or last speaker is, well, what about the implementation phase? So for us, we would dedicate dollars towards the planning, and any remaining dollars would go directly into implementation. And this for us would also lay the groundwork to apply for larger federal grants. That's part of the EDC's overall strategy. And the RWIP program is new this year. Well, it was piloted last year and fully implemented this year. And we expect that moving forward, it will hopefully be something that will be available to communities again. So our goal would be to have the data available to make the change that will truly impact. So that's why we are putting forth this study, and I would stand for any questions.
Do Walsh, Pembina, or Nelson County plan on contributing to this?
Yes, that's a really good question. The Red River Regional Council plans to contribute $5,000.
So for all three of those counties, they're going to give $5,000, and then, Grand Forks County, and other businesses support the EDC. Mm-hmm. So once again, we're picking up a majority of the cost.
Yeah, so that's also a very good point, but we have the largest population by far. If you look at the other 4 counties combined, they would not even equal our population, so we...
I support this more than I do the other one, so I move approval.
We have a motion by Osowski.
Second.
Second by Crary. Just one question. I see Senator Barta's out there. This is something that I'm assuming you guys worked out in the state legislature. Is this something that you had in mind for this project? It is? Okay. Seeing no other comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 6. Past due loan French taste.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Weigel. I'll try and go warp speed on these last two. So without rehashing all the details, French Taste is in default on both their C-Run and startup loans. We've worked with the city attorney's office through the default proceedings, and we're notified of the personal bankruptcy proceedings of the principal of that company. Through that process, as expected, I guess there's no assets, both personal or through the business, for us to collect on. The principal will discharge his personal guarantee associated with the C-Run as part of the bankruptcy, assuming that goes forward. It is a personal bankruptcy, so the business loans, which is the business to whom these loans are assigned to, will remain in place. However, there's no assets to collect on to repay. So it's important that we don't carry these on our books as receivables, for obvious reasons. So what we're asking for today would be to your formal, declaration of those loans as uncollectible at this time. Colloquially, I guess we've used the term write-off in the past. I want to make sure that it's clear as part of our recommended action and the motion that that term, or what we're looking to do here, is to take them off our books as receivables and consider them not collectible now. We're not writing off the obligation of the LLC to pay this debt or forgiving the loan or discharging it. We are absolutely not recommending or doing that. So should French Taste LLC ever fire up the grills again under French Taste LLC, the loans are still due and owing. We're not discharging those debts at all. We're just recommending we don't want to carry those on our books as receivables. So happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions?
Move approval.
Motion by Osowski, second by Kavami. Seeing no other comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to item number 7, past due loan, Coles Detailing.
Coles Detailing is another startup loan we've been working with kind of off and on over the past several months. He has been communicating with us, albeit intermittently, but he has been communicating with us. As kind of has become our standard practice, we've referred him back to working with SBDC to go through and develop basically a feasible workout plan, a restructure request. We've gone through kind of what's developed into a cycle, though, is that make the appointment and not be able to make it, reschedule, not be able to make, that's honestly what's kind of been going on for the past several months. He has remained in contact and has remained on, kind of repeating that cycle, but we're just not making progress fast enough. We assigned, at last October's meeting, we kind of set that formal deadline rather, of we want to have a proposal to this body for consideration by the end of the year. This is the last meeting of the year. He was not able to meet with SBDC in advance of that. He was not able to make that, get that portion of the process done again, and missed that deadline sort of for our staff report. So what proposal we did receive via email was what's included in the staff report and attached is essentially an informal email requesting $250 monthly payments until summertime, at which point you can make $500 monthly payments. So we've not had time to review that. That's not been run through the SBDC for feasibility, so I have no information other than that. What our recommendation is to, similar to the other startup loans that have kind of gotten to this point, is to proceed with, or to get your authorization to work with the city attorney's office to pursue collections or begin that process, formally declare the loan in default and begin that collections process. I'm not going to try and direct quote Mr. Gosted here, but as I understand it, we can begin that process, and should Mr. Cole go to SBDC, and we'll encourage him to do so in the interim, continue to work with them, hopefully develop as kind of intended, a thought through feasible workout plan, then bring that forward to this body should it materialize. This is really just an effort to drive towards some kind of resolution, though. So if he's able to follow our steps kind of and develop a feasible restructure proposal with the SBDC, we'll gladly bring it back forward. But we want to get started at least with that default process to make sure that we're progressing towards something. So
Thank you.
Also happy to stand for questions for that.
Comments, concerns, questions, motions?
I
Anyone?
move the recommendation to begin
Mo-
the proceedings.
Motion by Whitney, second by Holth. Further comments? Mr. Crary?
One quick
quickly,
comment, I
please.
just would like to note, at least prior to other startup ones, at least I've appreciated in the past their willingness to come and talk and try to figure out a plan and all that. So I hope, hopefully we can figure something out in the interim. But I mean, I think it's the only option we kind of have to do is to move forward, and hopefully then this kind of help put the feet to the fire to get an action plan and follow through. But I do appreciate at least their willingness to try to make a plan.
Definitely. Seeing no more comments, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion to adjourn by Osowski?
Second.
Second by Wolf. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.